Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today's video is one that holds great importance for millions of South Africans, especially our senior citizens and their families. We're diving deep into one of the biggest topics of 2025 so far, the SASSA Old Age Grant increase. That's right, the government has announced adjustments to the social grant system, and we're going to break it all down for you. From the exact amounts being rolled out, to why these changes are happening now, and what beneficiaries can expect in the coming months, we've got it all covered, so make sure to watch until the end and hit that like button if this information helps you or someone you care about. Now, the South African Social Security Agency, or SASSA, plays a vital role in the lives of millions of people across the country. One of the most crucial support structures it provides is the Old Age Grant, which helps elderly citizens afford the basic necessities of life, from groceries and medication to electricity and transportation. This grant has always been a lifeline, but with rising living costs, inflation, and economic instability, it's never been more essential. That's why any change in the grant amount, especially an increase, is big news. And in 2025, we're seeing some very real and meaningful changes that could ease the burden on our elders. So, what exactly is changing? Well, the old age grant is being increased as part of the government's broader strategy to provide targeted social relief and economic empowerment for vulnerable communities. For months now, there has been widespread concern that the existing grant amounts weren't keeping up with inflation. Pensioners have spoken out about how hard it's become to make ends meet, with the cost of food, transport, and utilities all climbing steadily. Many advocacy groups, civil society organizations, and even opposition parties have been putting pressure on the government to do more. And now, the Department of Social Development has responded. Let's talk numbers. As of April 2025, the SASSA Old Age Grant for individuals aged 60 to 74 has been increased by 100 Rand per month. That brings the total monthly grant to 2,190 Rand, up from 2,090 Rand in 2024. For those aged 75 and older, the grant has also been raised by 100 Rand, now standing at 2,210 Rand per month. While some may say that R100 isn't a massive jump, it does represent an incremental shift toward cushioning seniors against the high cost of living. Plus, these adjustments are just the first phase of a more comprehensive social support plan set to roll out over the next year. The Treasury has made it clear that they're building in room for further increases depending on economic conditions and tax revenue performance. But what led to this change in the first place? Let's rewind for a second. Over the past year, South Africa has been facing some tough economic realities. We've seen slow economic growth, high unemployment, and increased pressure on public finances. However, at the same time, the government has made it a priority to strengthen the social safety net. President Cyril Ramaphosa and Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana have both reiterated the commitment to protecting the most vulnerable, particularly the elderly, from the worst effects of poverty and inflation. During the February 2025 budget speech, Minister Godongwana emphasized that social grants are not just a form of assistance, they are a critical part of rebuilding the economy from the ground up. The increase in the old age grant was one of the most closely watched announcements from that speech. In fact, many experts and analysts had predicted some sort of change, given the rising public outcry and the soaring cost of essentials. And the government didn't disappoint. While they've maintained a cautious fiscal policy overall, they acknowledged that certain segments of the population simply cannot afford to wait for better economic conditions. The elderly, many of whom are no longer able to work or earn an income, depend entirely on these grants. That's why the increase was prioritized despite competing budgetary needs. Now, let's look at the real-world impact of this R100 increase. For many grant recipients, this means a bit more breathing room each month. It might cover an extra bag of groceries, help with taxi fare to the clinic, or even go toward the rising cost of electricity. In communities where every Rand counts, these small additions can make a significant difference. Social workers and community leaders have already begun reporting improved morale among pensioners since the announcement. there's a sense that the government is listening even if the road ahead remains challenging. Moreover, the increase is also seen as a way to indirectly boost the local economy. When more money flows into the hands of pensioners, it usually gets spent locally, at neighborhood shops, pharmacies, and service providers. This means that the grant doesn't just help the individual, it's sthayi. Of course, the increase hasn't come without criticism. Some economists argue that 100 Rand per month is still too little to match the pace of inflation. Consumer goods have been rising in cost by an average of over 6% annually, and in some categories like food, the rate is even higher. A loaf of bread that cost 15 Rand just a year ago might now be closer to 20 Rand. That means pensioners are still losing purchasing power in real terms, despite the increase. Others point to administrative challenges within SASSA, saying that unless the system becomes more efficient, even these positive changes won't be felt by everyone. However, the Department of Social Development has assured the public that they're taking steps to improve the overall delivery of grants. This includes new digital systems for faster processing, better fraud detection mechanisms, and more accessible helplines for elderly beneficiaries. There's also been a push to ensure that grant payments reach even the most remote communities on time, especially in areas where bank branches and post offices have been closing down. Mobile payment units and digital wallets are being rolled out more widely in 2025 to ensure no one is left behind. It's also worth mentioning that the old age grant increase is part of a broader social package. Alongside the pension boost, the government has also made adjustments to other grant categories, including the disability grant and the child support grant. This reflects a more holistic approach to social security, where the needs of different groups are being considered simultaneously. For elderly citizens who live with dependents or are caregivers for grandchildren, these combined increases can significantly improve household income. Now, let's talk a bit about what comes next. While the current increase is effective from April 2025, the government has left the door open for a potential second adjustment later in the year. This will depend largely on how the economy performs, how tax collections come in, and whether inflation continues to rise. If the Treasury finds room in the budget, we might see another 50 Rand or even 100 Rand increase by October or November. Finance Minister Godongwana has promised to review the situation mid-year, and many advocacy groups are already lobbying hard for more upward adjustments. In addition, the National Treasury is reportedly exploring a more long-term approach to calculating grant increases. Rather than annual adjustments that lag behind inflation, there is growing support for a formula-based system where grants are automatically indexed to the cost of living. This would provide more predictability and fairness for recipients, ensuring that the value of the grants doesn't erode over time. Such a system would bring South Africa more in line with international best practices, especially in countries where social protection is a cornerstone of economic policy. Another important development is the potential merging of the old age grant with other benefits like subsidized medical care, utility discounts, and food voucher programs. The Department of Social Development is currently piloting these integration programs in selected municipalities, and early feedback has been promising. The idea is to move toward a more comprehensive welfare state model where older citizens don't just receive a monthly cash grant but also gain access to the services they need to live with dignity. Public opinion on the grant increase has been largely positive. Many people see it as a step in the right direction, especially considering the broader challenges facing the country. Social media has been abuzz with stories from grateful pensioners, families sharing how the extra 100 Rand is helping them get through the month, and even younger South Africans expressing support for their elders. Community organizations have been holding info sessions to help seniors understand the changes and how to access their updated grants without hassle. For those who are wondering how to make sure they receive the increased amount, the process is actually quite straightforward. If you're already receiving the old age grant, the increase should automatically reflect in your April 2025 payment. There is no need to reapply or visit a SASSA office unless there is a specific issue with your account. However, if you haven't yet registered for the grant and you meet the eligibility criteria, being a South African citizen or permanent resident over the age of 60 with income and assets below a certain threshold, it's a good time to apply. The sooner you start the application process, the sooner you can start receiving these crucial funds. And remember, SASSA officials have warned the public to beware of scammers during this time. Whenever grant increases are announced, there's unfortunately an uptick in fraudulent activities where criminals try to exploit vulnerable individuals. Always deal directly with official SASSA channels and never share your banker details or ID number with anyone over the phone or online unless you are certain it's a legitimate request. The government is also stepping up efforts to crack down on grant-related fraud, and new tech tools are being used to protect beneficiaries from identity theft. So, what does all this mean in the bigger picture? Essentially, the SASSA Old Age Grant increase is a reflection of the government's ongoing effort to respond to the real, lived experiences of ordinary South Africans. It's not just a policy decision, it's a recognition that the elderly deserve respect, dignity, and support in their later years. While R100 might not solve every problem, it's a move that acknowledges the growing pressures pensioners face and attempts to ease that burden, even slightly. This increase is also a sign that the government is listening, and that citizen advocacy can lead to change. The more people speak up and demand accountability, the more responsive institutions like SASSA and the Department of Social Development will be. It's a reminder that we're all part of a shared society, and taking care of our elders is a responsibility that falls on everyone, from policymakers to communities to individuals. And that wraps up today's video on the 2025 SASSA Old Age Grant increase. We'll continue to monitor updates on the story and bring you the latest news as it unfolds. If this video helped you understand the changes, please give it a thumbs up, share it with friends and family, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more helpful updates like this. Thank you for watching, and until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.